Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Daily Fantasy Digest Podcast, the all-inclusive podcast where we talk all things fantasy sports to help give you an edge. I am your host, Joe Buer, and today I'm going to be breaking down the 10-game slate on May 19th. It's a Sunday slate, starts early at 12:05. I'm going to go ahead and give you my favorite pitching plays, a couple high-price guys and some low-price guys to help you get the bat stacks in that you're going to need, and then two or three of my favorite bat stacks today. One bat stack that really stands out for me, and then a few ones that might fly under the radar. So let's go ahead and jump right into the pitching plays that I like today. There is four high-priced guys. You have Chris Sale, Ryu, Syndergaard, and Charlie Morton. I'm interested in two out of the four of these guys. I think that they have the greatest upside to offer on this slate. I think that Ryu at 10.7K is just a massive pitcher. Just the numbers he's been putting up over the past four games, just incredible. We've seen K upside into the double digits, and I think that he gets a soft matchup against Cincinnati, who primarily hits lefties worse than they do righties. And I would really like to pay up for Ryu today, but it's going to be tough with the bat stacks I want to get in. So I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards Syndergaard, who would be my other pitcher. It's going to be hard to fit both of these guys in, but I think Syndergaard draws the most favorable matchup here against Miami, who's dead last place as far as batting average. Just a terribly hitting team, and Miami is definitely a terrible ballpark. So what I want to do is go ahead and roster Syndergaard here at SP1 against Miami. I think it's going to be between him and Ryu for the chalkiest pitcher on the slate. I project him for probably roughly 50% ownership. I think the matchup is just way too easy for a guy like Syndergaard who can really dominate and command with his pitches. So I'm going to go ahead and plug Syndergaard in there. Just for reference, if you do plug Ryu in there, you're really limited on the amount of guys that you can get. There isn't a lot of bat stacks that are pretty pricey today that are very enticing. So I do want to give two options here that you can look at in the mid-range, just to be able to fit in some of those bat stacks. One place I want to look at going a little bit lower is Reynaldo Lopez for the White Sox. 6.9K is just a little too soft for the K upside that he has. We've seen him get upwards in the 14K range here over against Detroit. I think that Toronto's a pretty soft matchup. I know Vlad Guerrero's been heating up a little bit for Toronto, but I think that Reynaldo Lopez draws somewhat of a favorable matchup here. And I think that he's somebody that I might want to look at moving forward to go ahead and get some of those bat stacks in. One other guy I do want to look at that I think a lot of people won't is Jared Eichhoff. We do know that Colorado hits terrible on the road versus Coors Field. Philadelphia is it's an interesting play for me. He does have a little bit of a rough outing last time against Milwaukee, but prior to that, it's been pretty smooth sailing for Eichhoff against some pretty steep opponents. Washington Nationals and Cardinals here putting up 26 and then almost 20. And I think that the price drop from 9.2K to 7.8K is a drastic drop for somebody who's averaging 17.9 fantasy points per game. So I want to lock in Eichhoff here as my SP2. Leaves me roughly 3.9K. Just for reference, if you do plug in Reynaldo Lopez, it gives you roughly 4,000. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in Eichhoff because I think that this is what my pitching is going to look like come lock tomorrow. Now for hitting stacks, there's two main places I want to look at. I really want to target the Oakland A's because they are just ungodly cheap, and I do want to target the St. Louis Cardinals, who are on the more expensive side. So first I want to go ahead and go over to Oakland here. If you can just look, it's almost a joke. Matt Chapman, righty, mashes lefties. Been on a little bit of a cold spell lately, as the whole Athletics team has been. And I want to lock him in at 4.2K. He's been roughly a 4.85K player for the longest time throughout this whole season, and I think that he just draws such a favorable matchup against Soto, who's going to be pitching probably the first two innings, and they're going to bring in a reliever after that. I just think this is a mash spot for all Oakland. I think every righty on Oakland is in play. Love Steven Piscotty at 4K, and love Jurickson Profar, who's just, it's ridiculous how cheap he is at 3.7K. If you look at his past games, he's hit a home run in one of the past four games, as well as a 3-for-3 game in the last game against Detroit. I think this is just too easy of a spot to stack 3 here, if not 4. If Chris Davis does play, which I'm assuming he will, you could stack him as well. 4.5K is too soft for Chris Davis. I like Robbie Grossman as well. I think those players are all in play as well. Moving to, I think, the chalkiest game that everybody's going to stack is St. Louis against Texas. St. Louis is going to be going against Drew Smyly. Team total is already, or the game total is already at 11 runs. I think that all of these players are in place. My favorite play, who still seems too cheap for me, is going to be Paul Goldschmidt at 4.4K. I really don't understand the pricing here. Paul Goldschmidt in this matchup should be roughly 4.7K. I think they're marking him down way too much, and I really do not understand. I really like Goldschmidt out of anybody on the Cardinals tomorrow. I think he's going to have the best performance tomorrow. I think he's just going to be able to really provide that upside that you need to be able to cash. I really like Marcell Ozuna if you can fit him in, as well as Paul DeJong. 4.8K seems too cheap for Paul DeJong and the way he's been playing and the fantasy points per game that he's been averaging. Paul DeJong has been roughly 5.2K, 5K, roughly. So we're seeing a little bit of a price dip, which is a little shocking to me, drawing a soft matchup against Smyly. But I do want to talk about a value play that I really also don't understand. A righty hitter who mashes lefties in Harrison Bader will be playing tomorrow. I really don't understand how his price is only 3.7K. Past 2 games have been heating up, 2 for 4 and 3 for 4 with a homer. I think that this is just a favorable matchup against Texas as St. Louis is starting to heat up again. So I think Bader's a great play as well. I would like to fit DeJong in, but it's just a little tough given that there's only 3.9K per player left. The strategy I think that would be for this type of situation, if you did want to fit DeJong in or Ozuna, is to go really soft on catcher as sort of a low-price catcher point here. I think a low-price catcher would probably be somebody like, let's see here, Kurt Casale, John Hicks, somebody like that at minimum price 3K that kind of bumps your price up a little bit more so you can go ahead and fit in some of those players. And lastly, one other stack I do want to talk about that I think is going to get really overlooked. New York Yankees are throwing a bullpen game tomorrow and starting Chad Green, who's absolutely dreadful. There's a few players that I really like from this stack. I'm a big fan of Austin Meadows. I think Austin Meadows is he's a phenomenal player, and as a lefty bat, just absolutely crushes righties. It's just ungodly. I believe as I'm recording this video, he hit a walk-off or, the leading home run in extra innings. He's just a force to be reckoned with. 5.5K is a steep price. You might have to move some of these players around if you wanted to fit him in, but I think Austin Meadows is in play. I think Brandon Lowe is in play. Big fan of Yandy Diaz, who usually hits leadoff. And I think going back to value plays that I do want to talk about if you do want somebody from this game, Kevin Kiermaier at 3.7K seems ungodly cheap to me as well. Has been on a little bit of a cold spell lately, but we know that he just smashes righty pitching. He's been known to be able to crush from that side of the plate, and I think that having some exposure to this game is definitely not going to hurt you in the long run. So I think if you were to put somebody like Kiermaier here, you'd be able to fit DeJong in and have no problem with picking a catcher. Now, what I do want to mention is a few value plays that you're going to look at for players that are just way too cheap, that seem almost ungodly too cheap. One of those players is going to be, for me, it's going to be Jesus Aguilar. Not really sure how he's 3.3K. Understand that he's been absolutely dreadful as of late, but 3.3K for somebody who has the upside to hit just moonshots is just somebody that I could potentially see rostering. I think he draws not the most favorable matchup against Fulte for the Braves, but I think that he's somebody you can put in if you need cap space as well. Also think that Nick Castellanos is another great play. For some reason, Castellanos is only 3.5K. We know what Castellanos can do, and we know that he's just a great average at bat player. 251 on the year. We know he's going up against Mike Fiers tomorrow. Did throw a no-hitter a couple games ago. It's not something I'm really scared of. I don't think he can do that again, and I don't think his performance. He did regress after that no-hitter, so I think Castellanos is a good play if you want to get some contrarian against the Oakland A's. One last play that I do want to look at, because I did mention Bader, as he was one of my value plays as well. I do want to mention Ronald Guzman, who's been playing very well as of late. Had a home run in the last 4 games, 2 hits in 2 of the 4 games, batting lefty going up against Jack Flaherty on the Cardinals. And I think that getting some exposure to the Texas side of this game is not going to be any detriment to you in the long run. I think getting some exposure to potentially somebody like Guzman or Asdrubal Cabrera, 3.8K, it's just way too cheap. I know that Flaherty has the potential to pitch a lights-out game, but I think that this is some exposure to this side is going to be beneficial to creating a potentially winning lineup. So that's going to be all for the bat stacks and pitching. This is roughly what my lineup is going to look like come lock tomorrow. Pitching is going to be Syndergaard and Eichhoff. Want exposure to the A's and the Cardinals the most, with some contrarian one-off exposure to the Tampa Bay Rays. I like Kiermaier there at 3.7K, but I really think Goldschmidt is probably going to be the highlight of the day, the player of the day as well. And I want to make him my thumbnail and dinger of the day call. I think Goldschmidt's going to go yard against Smiley tomorrow. I think it's just a favorable matchup, and I think that all the people on the Oakland A's are favorable matchups as well. I think that they're going to be the chalkiest team to stack, as well as the Cardinals. So be prepared and potentially be contrarian with some of those low price guys like Harrison Bader at 3.7K, who just mashes lefties. So I think that's somebody that you're going to want to lock in as well on the low end. So that's going to be it for this video. I would appreciate it if you would all subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. These are all live. We do roughly 3 to 4 breakdowns per week and an interview with somebody from the industry. So if you didn't have a chance to go ahead and check out the previous videos, please do so and show some support by following us on Twitter at FantasyDigest_. And we much appreciate it. We tweet things before lock and tweet out all the videos as well. You can also go follow us on Facebook at Daily Fantasy Digest. If you did enjoy this video, please drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, peace.